I will just be reading from my phone. I was born the sixth of 7 kids in a conservative Baptist family. We were homeschooled, attended church every Sunday and Wednesday, and had an easy life. I accepted Christ at 6 years old and was baptized the same year. My mother made sure to incorporate Bible time into our homeschooling, and we memorized multiple passages, but she never taught us what they meant. She imposed a lot of rules on us, running her household with an iron fist, while my dad worked 60-plus hours a week to support a family of 9 on a mechanic's salary. Growing up, we were never taught about relationship with God, only the rules. I was never given a foundation to fall back on, and if someone had asked me why I was a Christian, I probably would have said, because my mom wants me to be. My teenage years were a blur, starting with my mother developing cancer. As the cancer grew, so did tension among my siblings and mother, eventually splitting the family apart. With some of my older siblings not on speaking terms, my younger sister and I were left home with a father who didn't know how to be a father, and left out of the loop of what was going on in the family. My mother kept declining in health and going in and out of the ICU until eventually being put into a nursing home. My second oldest sister continued homeschooling us, and on May 15th of 2012, when I was 17, my mother passed away. Now all I wanted to do was join the military, but I wanted to join as soon as possible, and because my mother had sent me back a year in school, I wasn't scheduled to graduate until I was 19. So I decided to skip the 12th grade and get a GED and join the military. And that's what I did. My grief counselor at the time was a retired Marine and suggested I become a corpsman in the Navy. And on October 1st of 2013, I shipped off to boot camp. Now all this time, I still understood and believed in the basics of the gospel. I knew that Jesus died for me and that was the only way to heaven. But I never knew what that truly meant or why we believed the Bible. I knew it was supposed to set Christians apart somehow, but all I had seen in the youth group was teenagers claiming to be Christians, but not living any differently than the world. And if that's what it meant to be a Christian, then what was the point? I didn't want to be a part of the hypocrisy that I assumed was in all churches, so when I joined the Navy, where I had to be an adult and had no structure, I fell into worldly things. I chased sex and drugs and developed an addiction to porn. However, throughout my 5 years in the Navy, I was searching for something. I knew there had to be something more about spirituality and God than what I was taught, so I explored other belief systems like Buddhism, Transcendentalism, and Universalism, desperately trying to make sense of the world and God. I knew there was something other than this physical world. I knew a new creation made more sense than evolution, and there had to be a God. I still believed in Jesus, I just didn't know why. Finally, a few months before I was scheduled for discharge in 2018, my brother, whom I hadn't spoken to in a long time, texted me. He had always been strong in his faith and was able to answer every single question I had about God and the Bible. At this point, I finally understood why I believed the gospel and the Bible, and started walking back into real faith in God. It all made sense to me. He was able to clarify why the Bible is infallible, why Jesus had to die for us, and what that should mean to me. It changed everything, and I knew I had found what I was looking for. I was discharged on September 11th of 2018. My brother picked me up from the airport, and I slept on his couch. 2 days later, he hosted a community group at his house where I met a beautiful nurse. We hit it off, bonded over medical experiences, and became fast friends. She had such a pure heart and was the nicest and most generous person I had ever met, and I loved her immediately. As I kept pursuing God in the relationship with Nikki, I kept trying to ignore the fact that I was still deeply in an addiction to porn. I was ashamed about it, but also unwilling to change. At one point, God gave me a prophecy. During worship at church one day, a friend of my brother's came to me and said he had a vision. He said he saw me walking down a path when I came to a block. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move the block and get past. Finally, I got a lever that I stuck under the block and jumped on. The block was flung away, and I was able to continue on the path. The strange thing is, I knew what the prophecy was about. I knew God was calling me out of my addiction and telling me I couldn't get closer to Him until I addressed it. I still chose to believe it was for something else, though. There were multiple other times that He pointed it out to me, but every time I ignored it and kept lying to myself and others about it. In November of 2020, Nikki and I got married, but I still had this addiction I wasn't willing to address, and that I kept lying to her about. It wasn't until early the next year that I realized I needed help. I wanted to be free from this addiction, but I didn't know how. I kept trying on my own by sheer willpower, but kept failing over and over. Finally, in summer of 2021, I couldn't take it any longer and fell on my knees, crying out to God for help. Immediately, he took my hand and pulled me out of the dirt, showing that it was only by his power that I am saved.
Amen.
From that day on, my faith started to grow again. The Lord led us to this church where we have been immensely blessed. Intimate relationship grew with both my wife and my God. And although the spirits of pornography and addiction have tried to retake control in my life, God continuously shows me that he is in control.
Amen.
I am constantly reminded of the grace of God in my life. I realize that when I pursue him, life is better. I have more joy, more energy, more motivation, and more peace. It is by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ that I am redeemed, and he has given me life. Since then, I have been tempted harder than I ever thought possible. And although part of me is dead, and I am a son of the Most High God.
Amen.